So, 2 o'clock, I banged on Sally's door, David's mum's door, and she says, "Come on in, Colin, come on and get a wee cup of coffee. I'll get David up." So anyway, I come in. She says, "You know what the tea and coffee is?" She says, "I'll have a wee cup of tea, 2 sugars and some milk." And so I went down to the kitchen. Their house was like my house. I basically grew up in David's house, with Barney and Andrew. Andrew was also in the military. Andrew was a Marine. He was based over in Plymouth at the time, and like David, I got to see Andrew. It could have been every 6 months or every year, depending on where Andrew was deployed or what he was doing at the time. Barney had just joined the military, so he was away. He went to the Marines, so he was away, and he was doing training. I think at the time he was in the Brecons, as far as he told me where he was going. And so I didn't really get to see much of him either. So most of the time I was working with my sister's boyfriend Frankie, who was a builder, a building contractor, and I would labour for him. So when I out in the kitchen, and I did coffee, 2 coffees, one for Dave, one for me, and a cup of tea for Sally. Dave came down. Dave was a tank. Dave was built like he was built like an orc. He was all muscle, little red-headed guy, 5'6", and an absolute powerhouse psycho. And Dave came down in his underwear, and Sally was, "Jesus Christ, David, get some trousers on you." And so he says, "Ma, I'm going to have a shower." So he went in to have a shower. As he walked past me, another big cuff in the back of the head. Just seemed to be Dave's signature move. A big cuff in the back of the head. And he says, "Gibson," he goes, I'll be out in a minute." He says, "I'm going to get a shower." And he says, "We'll head to Homer." So anyway, sitting talking to Sally, and Sally was saying, David saying he's going to take it to Belize, Colin. And I was like, "Yeah, Sally, she told me that." And she says, "We were in Belize," she says, "a couple of years ago." She says, "Me and Barney, who was Barney Senior, who was his dad. And I believe that they had went down there for about 3 months." And she said, "It is absolutely like nothing," she says, "you've ever seen." She says, "The people are lovely. The Belizean people are lovely." Said, "The island's gorgeous." She says, "You're not going to know yourself." She says, "And let me tell you something." She says, "Let me tell you something, son." She says, "When you get down there," she goes, "make a life for yourself." She says, "And don't come back." She says, "Don't come back to this town." She goes, "There's nothing here for nobody." She says, "I've lived here," she goes, 50 years of my life. She says, "and it's just a den." She says, "A den is a shithole." She says, "Get you away." She says, "David will take care of you." She says, "And don't come back." She says, That's all I'm going to say to you." And that hit me. That hit me like a punch in the face. Nobody had ever said to me, "Go and make something of your life. Go and, let David show you, let David teach you, let David take care of you." You know what I mean? And he'll keep you on the right path. Nobody ever told me that before. Nobody ever told me that I was capable of achieving anything. So David came out of the shower about 20 minutes later, smelling like a stripper's handbag. And he went upstairs, he got dressed, he came down, swallowed the coffee, reached into his pocket, pulled out a wad of cash, and gave Sally a bunch of money. And we left. So we left. And so we got in the car. He had an old black Datsun Cherry that he had got while he was in Germany, when he was based over there in the military. And he drove it back, and he had given it to his dad. And his dad, Barney, had worked for British Telecom. So Barney was out working, and David had use of the car. So we got in the car, off we went. 15 minutes later, we're down in Homer, found a wee cafe, sitting down, and David hands me a bunch of cash. And I was like, "David, no, I don't." He says, "Take the fucking money, Cole. Take the money," he goes, "and put it in your fucking pocket." I got there, and it was just rolled up. And I didn't count it, and he stuffs it into my pocket, like, and I'm embarrassed, I'm kind of cut to the bone. He says, "Don't be silly." He says, "Don't be fucking silly." He says, take that money." He says, "I have plenty of money, you take that money." And so we sat and we talked about Belize. He pulled out this big packet of photographs, and him with his scuba gear on, and his dive shop, which was called Dive Dreams. And his boat, which was Dive Dreams, and the motto on the boat, or the logo, what do you call it? The motto on the boat was "Dream your dive, Dive Your Dream at Dive Dreams, which I just thought was fucking absolutely brilliant. And so he pulls out all these pictures, and we're on the table, and I'm looking at these pictures, and I you know, I couldn't believe all this stuff. His wife Sue, who was Chinese, had a big restaurant called the Jade Garden, which was just directly next to the house. You just walked out of the house, and 10 feet you were up at the restaurant. He showed me, you know, the restaurant and stuff, and you know, he showed me, you're going to meet this guy, you're going to meet this person, you're going to meet that person, you know, this person's an asshole, and, you know, fucking be careful when you meet this person here, you know, as David always did. He always kind of guided me on the straight and narrow and stuff, and you know, David had a radar that was a bullshit meter, and within a few minutes, David could tell if you were a nice person or not, you know what I mean? And David would never avoid people, but he wouldn't, you know, go out of his way to have conversations with them. He would say hello, he'd be cordial, and I ended up basically learning a lot from David. So we spent the day in Oma walking around. He bought some clothes, he bought some new bits and pieces, he got some new shorts. He just had a son called Connor, so he's, you know, going around buying baby stuff. While he was home, he went to the dentist, and you know, he went and he got a medical check, and you know, the things that you basically couldn't get while you were down in Belize, because it just, when I got down there, it just had one little medical centre. To get anything done, you had to go to the mainland, to Belize City, which was not a good place at all, to be honest. And so he got everything done while he was at home. Got his bloods checked, you know, he had his heart check. He basically had a full body MOT. Went to the dentist and did everything he needed to do. Picked up some bits and pieces for Sue. I'd met Sue about 2 years before when they got married, and David brought her back to Fintner. And you know, to me, Sue was lovely, and she was always kind of nice to me. Little did I know that would change once I got to Belize, and yeah, that was quite an eye-opener. Anyway, so looked at the photographs. I couldn't believe this. The water was just turquoise blue. David's boat was a 27-foot mahogany skiff with a little canopy and big 150 Johnson engines, and you know, and all the dive gear that he had, and you know, and David was operating out of his house at the time. His mother-in-law and Sue's brother lived upstairs. It's a big old house, and David and Sue and Connor, they had the downstairs, the kitchen and the living room and everything. And so David's dive center was in the house, was in their dining area. So David's house, or Sue's house, was about 100 meters from the seawall where the sea began. And little did I know that 2 weeks later I'd be sitting on David's back porch, staring at that sea. I'd never seen anything like it. And so yeah. So the next step for me was to ring Jenny and to let Jenny know that I would be going to Belize, and if she would be okay with that. And, you know, we were still kind of together at that time. I'd go down, I'd spend the weekend every 2 weeks, spend a weekend, you know, take her and Connor out and give her money and, you know, provide for what Connor needed. And little did I know that once I got to Belize, that would kind of be the end of me and Jenny as a couple, which was quite sad as well. So the next 2 weeks with Dave, he brought some scuba diving PADI, Professional Association of Dive Instructors. David had brought the PADI dive manuals home and had told me to get stuck in and start reading and start learning about Archimedes' principle, Boyle's law, Dalton's law, and a few other bits and pieces, depths and pressures, and you know, everything that you needed to learn as a scuba diver. And I got into those books, and I couldn't believe that the next step for me in 2 weeks, you know, getting over to San Pedro, that I would start learning to scuba dive. So yeah.